Well, hi, this is Dr. Scott Langford. Welcome back to the Stanford Global Educators Network YouTube channel. And I'm here with one of my own colleagues from Foothill College, Professor Kathryn Maurer, who has so many hats to wear. She's here to talk to us today about a brand new, incredibly exciting environmental justice campus abroad program in April of 2024 that's going to Cuba. And so we want to hear all about that. But I should mention that in addition to leading that trip, Kathryn is the president of our district faculty senate, the past president of our faculty senate at Foothill College, chair of the anthropology department, the co-founder or founder of our global studies program at Foothill College. And there's another Gen Channel interview about that. And she's also heading up our overall efforts to build out a truly global campus abroad program for our students and for the other students that can participate. Worth mentioning that Foothill College campus abroad programs, I've led a few myself, are open to community members and very much open for credit to University of California students and California State University students, because all of our classes will transfer there. So with that in mind, Kathryn, welcome to the Stanford Gen Channel.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks for the great introduction.
Well, thank you. So I was so eager, literally so eager to hear more about this program, not only because I was deeply involved in campus abroad programs myself during my time at Foothill, I'm now emeritus, but also because it was a deep dream of mine to build environmental justice into campus abroad studies. And although my classes did feature it, as they always have, it wasn't built in from the foundation up. So when I saw what you had accomplished, I had my usual moment of jealousy and admiration. So why don't you lead us through some of the basics about this incredibly exciting new offering you have for environmental justice in Cuba in April of 2024, just a few months away.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this. Thanks. And I'll just start off by saying, well, I'm excited to talk about it and all the infrastructure. I did want to say we still have some spots available. So Scott, if you want to come, we're taking, all ages, all experience levels. So, just letting you know if you.
I was looking at the criteria, and I'll add another thing that I wanted to accomplish that we did not accomplish in my day a few years ago was a non-credit option for older adults like myself who want to hear the marvelous lectures and participate in the marvelous activities, but don't necessarily want to write papers and take tests.
Right.
And so I was also very proud of you for building that new feature in, because I think it's essential.
Yeah.
And it does raise the possibility that Dr. Scott might have to dust off his travel bags and come with you.
That would be wonderful. So thanks. So let's see where to start. Well, first, I'll just say that also, like you, I have been really aware of kind of some gaps in how we bring environmental justice more formally into some of our coursework degrees. I mean, that's why I got involved early on with those conversations about global citizenship at Foothill and even creating a global studies program. And it was really kind of driven by a passion I had around environmental and social justice, and then looking at how the global and the local interact and affect particularly countries, communities, indigenous populations, that really suffer the effects of us not looking at these issues deliberately enough, right? So this is really, a very deep passion, both personal, academic, professional, the interest that I've had for many years. This particular program, the April 2024 Environmental Justice Program in Cuba, actually was kind of came together in a confluence of reasons very, very quickly. We actually didn't have plans to offer this program up until about a month ago. So it came together very fast, but it came together because I used to be an academic director of study abroad through SIT Study Abroad. That's the School for International Training out of Brattleboro, Vermont. In a former life, I was academic director in Greece and in Spain.
Wow.
And an organization that I worked with and collaborated with in Spain, in Granada, Spain, had really very, very strong kind of social justice aspect to their organization that I was working with for language classes and homestay, kind of normal infrastructure of what we might think of as campus abroad, study abroad, but they very much wanted a lens of engaging with communities that might not be traditional communities to engage with during a study abroad. And so I was recently back there in the summer, and there's now sort of a second generation keeping this organization. I don't know where I'm pointing here, but they're called Foothill-De in Granada, Spain, and it's a regenerative education is what they call themselves. And they've been running some programs in Spain, Morocco, and more recently Cuba. And so we were talking, and I thought, we can do something really fabulous together with a collaboration between Foothill and Foothill, with their infrastructure built up in Cuba, and then our new Global Experiential Learning Office, which I can talk more about at Foothill. Here's an opportunity to really bring a program that I think we've needed and wanted for a long time. That said, we've had, Professor Ron Herman,
Yes, exactly.
Foothill, right, through the photography program, has been taking students to Cuba for a number of years with a photography bent. And so that actually turns out to be, I didn't know much about that program before this one came into being. But I've been learning more about it. And actually, some of the participants on that program are now wanting to see Cuba through another lens. So
Oh, good. Yeah.
So it's kind of an exciting collaboration.
Right. Well, and Professor Herman's programs also had a deep social justice strand woven in them. So yeah, I was thinking there's a lot of overlap, but it was not explicitly at all about environmental justice and climate change. So this is one step beyond. But yes, Foothill has a long tradition of fantastic programs in Cuba already.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm excited to continue that tradition. And so what I'll also say, Scott, I'll offer a little, we're trying to intentionally change some of the language we've been using around campus abroad. I'm not sure if you're aware about that. So even the terminology campus abroad carries a little bit with it a colonial kind of perspective, right? The idea you take your campus, you plop it abroad, right? You take everything with you, your own curriculum, your own faculty, your own students, and boom, you enjoy the country there, right? And
academic colony abroad, almost. Good heavens.
Exactly. And so when I had the great fortune last year of being invited by then acting President Bernadine Fong to become the new faculty coordinator of our brand new office of global experiential learning, actually one of the first jobs is I was invited to do that before I had the title. And it was coming up with what should we even call this office? And we made a deliberate decision to call it not campus abroad. We didn't want to call it that. We wanted to call it global experiential learning, to actually really emphasize the idea that these programs are not so much about, trips abroad, staying abroad, but they're really about developing awareness, skills, attitudes of what it means to be a global citizen. And those can be through experiential learning abroad, as well as local programs that are infused with some of the tenets of global studies, and service learning, community civic engagement, all of these sort of facets. So that we're actually trying to not call it campus abroad, we're calling it experiential learning abroad.
No, and I'm fully behind that. I mean, I hate to mention it, but there's a negative stereotype about campus abroad, especially in Europe
Right.
where students will sometimes nickname it party abroad.
Yep.
Um, and of course, we professors push back very hard against that stereotype, and my classes were quite rigorous. However, I think it's well worth unplugging any remnant of that. And we'll add that the fact that this is not a program based in Europe is important also, right?
Yes, although we did begin, so the new office did launch last year with 2 programs in Europe. So we did run a Florence program last spring and a London program in the fall. And there was a lot of demand, although I was attending all last year outreach events, recruitment events, information sessions for Florence and London. And I had many students approaching me with, can we go someplace outside of Europe, right? Like when can we? And so it was really good. We still, of course, have the request for Europe, and we'll probably do another program.
Well, we always should. And social justice and environmental issues also exist in Europe. I don't have to tell you. I was texting with our colleague Jay Mensis, who is one of the 2 faculty in London this morning.
Yes.
So so I am well aware. So no shade on experiential learning. In fact, he was using exactly that terminology, experiential learning, and reflecting on how to bring that back into the classroom, right? At Foothill College. How do we bring this back to Los Altos Hills?
Exactly.
All right. So how about a little bit more about what's actually planned in Cuba for you?
Yeah, so I'm super excited to tell you a little bit more about that. So we're going to be, again, you can see kind of the dates up top of me. So it's April 8th through 23rd. And so we'll be starting out in Havana. I'm taking a maximum of 20 students. So just so it's not going to be a huge group.
Okay.
And then in terms of leads, it's just myself as the instructor of record, and I'll talk a little bit later about the courses. And then the executive director and the academic director of CELEI, this organization from Granada. Yeah, so it'll be the 3 of us as the leads. We are going to be starting out in Havana. By the way, we got a great group flight, so I'll be flying together from San Francisco, so through Miami and then to Cuba. And so we'll be, kind of traveling as a group, landing together, and we'll spend the first few days in Havana, really getting oriented, settled, and then beginning to engage in some of the, kind of academic learning through visits to important sites, including the university and other government places in Havana, to really begin to, start to build the context, right? For context, both the political, economic, historical context for the environmental issues that we'll begin to really focus on. We want to really understand, some of how the demographics of Cuba, indigenous populations that existed, migrations, from the slave trade, the colonial aspect, political situation, only being 90 miles from the United States. We've got to talk about all of that. And all set in a context of really deep cultural appreciation of Cuba. I can share this. I was actually in Cuba once, many, many, many years ago. I was selected as a teenager to represent the United States in an international summer camp in Cuba, but I haven't been back since. And so I am thrilled to do that.
Well, that'll be fascinating in and of itself to see the many changes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to be staying throughout in kind of a more local immersion. Cuba has a structure of what's called casas particulares, which is not exactly homestay. Homestay kind of gives the idea that you're living with a family. While these are with families, there is kind of set up an infrastructure to kind of have a guest house program, more like that. So we'll be staying with families and in communities, and in being served meals that the families would be eating. So very much embedded in the community. So once we get the context setting from in Havana. Then we'll head down for like the next 3 days to Playa Girón area, which is down at the south, and it's right next to one of the largest nature preserves in Cuba. And what's really fascinating is the United Nations has actually recognized Cuba for its environmental preservation efforts, and in this area in particular are a number of programs that they've been working on for decades. And so, there's turtle sanctuaries, crocodile sanctuaries, a lot of kind of the biodiversity of the area is incredibly rich. And so we'll be really focused on learning from the experts there. What have they put in place? Why? What are the issues that are affecting, life, both social and biological life, right, in the areas? And so I'm very excited about that. We'll be doing probably some service days, like potentially a beach cleanup where turtles lay eggs, right, to kind of contribute as well our collective force in trying to do a little help there. And then from there, we'll go and spend the longest amount of time in a region called Viñales, which is to the west of Havana. And that's an agricultural region, stunningly beautiful, kind of surrounded by these mountains, just gorgeous area, but it's quite rural. And so again, we'll be staying with families and really understanding kind of the impacts of climate change, the impacts of, legislation and how that's affecting farmers, and how, kind of what gets in the way sometimes of what they need to do from an economic perspective, but protecting the environment. Really hear from the locals kind of what are the issues and how are they problem solving around them. There's also kind of a robust artisan community in that area. So we'll be, learning some drumming and dancing and different artwork, and, really trying to also, have a great time with our Cuban hosts. And then finally, we'll wrap things up in Havana with, again, an opportunity to do some deep reflection, both intellectual as well as personal, right? A lot of this program really is about getting the participants to really see their own agency in these issues and their own relationship to them, not separating from it, right? That's a deep objective, learning objective, I could say, of the program. And then we fly home together on the 23rd.
Wow. Well, you certainly have me ready to sign up at a moment's notice. Watch out. You might have just sold the program to me. But I also just want to congratulate you as a colleague on the way so many strands of what you've done with your professional life and your leadership at Foothill come together in this program. It really is. It's amazing that it came together so fast, even based on past connections that you had as a program leader before you came to Foothill College. So it's a beautiful achievement, but it's also a summative achievement, I think, of many, many, many years of labor and leadership and vision and patience, which you've always had more of than I have in the world of academia, I must say. But congratulations on that. It is in this sense a dream come true, or a dream made true by years of patient effort. So maybe we should talk a little bit more on that level of how this came together. You mentioned that our interim president, Bernadine Fong, who, if I recall correctly, started the first campus abroad program for any community college in California way back when she was our president in a prior century. So she has a long history herself as an innovator, as an educational innovator, in making sure that students have a global consciousness and think of themselves as global citizens. So why don't you, dial it back a little bit here in terms of what it took to get this going and how it integrates with your global studies program as well, of which you really were the primary founder and workhorse, I might even add, because it was a heck of a lot of work. There's another Gen Channel interview with Kathryn about exactly this.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, so definitely a big shout out to Bernadine Fong, Chuck Fong, for her vision, kind of in bringing this office together. And I want to highlight actually a decision that was made. I don't know if she made it alone or with the cabinet, but it was already made before I got involved, which was to create this new Office of Global Experiential Learning under the Dean of Equity and the Office of Equity. And I
Oh,
really,
that's right. That's a key point. Thank you for reminding me. I'd forgotten that.
it's super because
Brilliant.
yeah, and it really just brings right to the forefront and acknowledges that you know, oftentimes the students who get to participate on study abroad or campus abroad, you know, are not the students that we're serving in the community college system,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And so really it is an access issue in terms, you know, an equity,
It really is.
you know, educational equity access issue to figure out how to create programs and supports for students to attend them. And we're working on, I don't want to sort of make this sound like we've got this all figured out, because we don't, right? And these programs still cost a significant amount of money, and we do
Right.
not have nearly enough scholarship funding to really break down those barriers. It's a big
Right.
goal of ours, right? We're working with the our Foothill-De Anza Foundation
Good.
and sort of trying to look at fundraising efforts to create a robust scholarship program,
Mhm.
because that is really, and we do have, we do actually already have some a diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships, really, you know, trying to make sure that students that identify with populations that don't commonly go abroad have some support.
Fantastic.
So yeah, you know, she created that, we did that, and we're really looking in this office of just what you said, how to really call in all of the faculty that have been doing these programs abroad, have experience doing programs abroad, having experience bringing environmental social justice issues into their courses, into their classes. We just launched an advisory committee, so I will be reaching out to you about that as well.
Okay.
So yeah, so we really, you know, want to make the connection between the programs and the study abroad or experiential learning abroad programs and our 4-credit coursework certificates degrees, right? And so yes, I spent a lot of time working with colleagues. Brian Evans was another one, on the global studies ADT, the transfer degree,
Great.
which did require the creation of 2 new core classes, Introduction to Global Studies, which is GLST1 at Foothill, and then Global Issues, GLST2. And I'll actually be teaching GLST2 as part of the Cuba program. So
Wow.
that's it's an exciting, you know, direct link to the Global Studies program. And so, yeah, you know, we've talked a lot about, could we create some type of capstone project for global
Mm.
studies that would include kind of having done one of these programs.
Right.
We don't want to add requirements that the state doesn't necessarily require, right? So we're kind of caught in that
Right.
little conundrum, but they absolutely connect. And so now Dr. Julie Jenkins, who was on the interview that we had done and talking about global studies, she's currently the chair of the global studies department. And so, you know, I know she's very interested in kind of figuring out how to put all these experiences together too for students.
Right. Well, and
Yeah,
worth noting, I mean, I entirely agree. We need to work harder, harder, harder in making these programs financially accessible to students who traditionally can't go along. But it's also worth noting, because many of our students do transfer, that if you go on an experiential learning abroad program with Foothill College or any other California community college, you go at a fraction of what the same program would cost you if you wait until you transfer to a UC or a CSU, because you're paying $32 a unit instead of paying the whatever it is, hundreds of dollars a unit at a CSU or a UC. So yes, it's expensive, and yes, many of our more marginal students are priced out, and we need to fix that. But at
yes.
the same time, it literally is a fraction of the cost of waiting until you've transferred to Berkeley, waiting until you've transferred to UCLA, waiting until you've transferred to Sacramento State or San Francisco State, any of these places, and then you decide that you want to go. It's going to be that much more expensive because you'll be paying their tuition, in addition to the fact that we are wonderful teachers.
Yes,
So
absolutely,
there we
absolutely.
go. Maybe you should say a little bit more now about the those individual classes. You mentioned one, so why don't you lead me through your curriculum offerings?
Yeah, so I'm going to be offering a total of 3 classes, 6 units total. So I'll be offering the 4-unit GLST2 Global Issues,
Okay.
which is a thematic course, right? Really trying to understand, globalization, effects of, and all of the interrelated facets through politics, economics, culture, so society. But of course, I'm going to frame it all within the Cuban context, right? And the readings associated with Cuba. Then I'll be teaching a 1-unit introduction to applied cultural anthropology field methods. So basically, this course will be really just a very brief introduction to how ethnography works and why ethnography is so critical when talking about social justice, environmental justice, and really like deeply engaging with a community and learning through the what we call in anthropology the emic perspective, the insiders of that local community, and not imposing an outsider's perspective, right, on what a solution might be in a local context. So I'll be introducing students to kind of how you engage in an ethnographic interview, what you're observing, how you kind of have the cross-cultural lens, when you go into a new community. And then I'll be offering the 1-unit, it's called the SOSC, SOCH 79, which is an introduction to community civic engagement. And again, it'll just be a brief introduction, what do we mean by community civic engagement? How does this work? Where is sort of empowerment kind of generated? Again, really being mindful of the privileges that we have coming from, rich California, 5th largest economy in the world, going to Cuba, one of the poorest economies, right? And so kind of what does that mean to engage with the community and be mindful of that power dynamic? And so the way the courses will work is we'll be, really, they start from when you're headed to the airport, frankly, right? And it's really a 24/7, type of learning experience during those 15 days. And then if you're signed up as a 4-credit student taking those classes, then you'd have another 2 weeks after we return, which I'll move into an asynchronous online environment in Canvas, where we'll be then doing some of the more directed readings, reflections. I really have the intention of every student developing kind of a personal action plan through this program, but it's too hard to kind of actually write all that up while we're experiencing it. So we'll kind of have those couple weeks when we come back to continue that and do some assessments, of like the learning and all of that good stuff we've got to include. So that's the 4-credit piece, again, sort of the 6 units. And so that would go from April 8th really all the way to May 3rd. Because it'll continue 2 weeks after. But then, as we mentioned right at the beginning, I'm really excited that through Associate Vice President Teresa Ong, who's right now leading our community education office, where we've created these not-for-credit slots through community ed. Some colleges call that extension, right? There's different names for that. At Foothill, it's community ed, and people can sign up and participate in the full experience while in Cuba, but then not be signed up for the credit or have to do the courses. But I can, work with them if they want to do the action plan for sure.
What are the timelines involved between now and departure? Because I know there's always deadlines. There have to be.
So we are working really hard to actually fill the program by the end of December.
Okay.
And we already do. We're about halfway there. So yeah, so we get interest every day. We are running some information sessions when they're scheduled early enough in the day. My friends Antonio and Arturo, who live in Granada, Spain, they join me on the Zoom.
Oh,
So it's
good.
really fun that it's the three of us talking about them. And I can share with you kind of where those dates are publicized for the information session. But yeah, so we run those, and then as soon as you even think you're kind of interested, but you're not totally sure yet, it just kind of sounds intriguing. I recommend filling out. We have what's called a preliminary interest form linked to our website. So Foothill Global Experiential Learning has a website, and then you'll see there a link to the Cuba program. You go into the Cuba website and you'll see a big thing that says preliminary interest form, and you select that.
Okay.
And all that asks you for really is your name and an email and kind of like a little bit of information about you, just to determine, are you eligible? Like, you do need to have a passport or be able to get one, right? And be over 18, certain questions, right? Kind of
Yeah, that is important too.
yeah. So, but basically what I do with anyone who fills that out is then I add you to a Canvas site. So for those who don't know what Canvas is, I'm assuming everyone listening to this probably does, but it's the course learning management system we use at Foothill. And I've created a site that's a Cuba information project site. And so it houses all sorts of information, our PowerPoint from the info sessions. It's got a discussion board where you can ask questions and get answered. And then most importantly, it actually houses our application. So it's there that you can complete the application. It's pretty fast. You can probably complete the application in about 10-15 minutes.
Great.
And then, there's a few questions about kind of why, or do you want to do this program, right? Just making sure it's a good fit. And then to reserve your spot, we ask for $100 deposit, and I give instructions on how to get that to me. And then payment, actually, the rest of the payment of the fees is not due until February, beginning of February. But what is going to become sooner, and why we want this filled by December, is we've got to pay for our group flight.
Of course,
January. So we've set January 5th as the application deadline if you want to be on the group flight and if you want to be considered for one of our scholarships. That is on January 5th, deadline. But I would say don't wait, because we are accepting on a rolling basis.
Right.
Meaning, as they come in, I process, and as people pay their $100 deposit, the space gets reserved for them. Right. So, you don't
on my trips, we turn people away with tears in their eyes. I mean, not making up the tears in their eyes. They waited too long. Yeah. And we couldn't accommodate any more students, and they just waited too long for their tickets. And so they had to wait another year, basically.
Right now, I've just pulled up our foothill.edu/global, right? So this is our global experiential learning website. And I'll just point out, this isn't our only program, right? So
this is important. Yeah, look at that.
We do have Professor Sam Connell is again running an indigenous archaeology program in Hawaii in the summer. Absolutely, you should probably interview Sam, because
I think I should. Yes,
program in collaboration with Dr. Mike Wilcox, who teaches at Stanford. So this is a really interesting program. And then, we don't have time to talk about all the other things, but here are the programs you can see we're currently publicizing. Some of them have passed, but we're still, so people can get a sense of what may be coming up. And then, so here's our Cuba program. So you can see here, it gives you some upcoming information sessions. Right now, I only have them publicized through this next week. We've got 2 at the end of this week, but I'll be adding some more as we go on. So just keep checking back. And if you want to join by Zoom during the info session, right, you can just select here and it takes you right to the Zoom room for these info sessions.
Fantastic.
And so this gives you, again, some of the stuff I've talked through about the dates, the theme, the highlights, objectives, the different options for credit. And then here we get to, if you can see what I was talking about, the pre-application interest form, right? So this is what you'd fill out, no obligation at all. It just adds you to a Canvas site that
Right.
then has more information. So talks about some of the costs. It's a little bit a different fee for the for credit versus not for credit.
Right.
So it goes through some of those. Financial aid does apply for those who are for credit. So I do want to also encourage students who are financial aid recipients or might be eligible for financial aid to seek out that option.
Maybe we can just wrap up by saying, the mission of the Global Educators Network and Stanford educational program to internationalize the curriculum is to internationalize the curriculum at community colleges nationwide. Maybe we can just both reflect a little bit about how important programs like these are in terms of literally decolonizing the community college curriculum and truly exposing our students, especially those students who have not been traditionally offered these kinds of programs, right? Especially those students, offering them a truly globalized, truly internationalized perspective, not just for their academic learning, but also for their later career success and their role as absolutely essential global citizens on the planet in this moment in time.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree 100% with everything you just said. The only thing perhaps I'd add on is that in addition to all of that, I also think these programs are so essential in the excitement of learning, right? And the
Yes.
adventure and the experience and the whole body, especially post COVID, where so much instruction has moved online, the asynchronous online, right? We're really, I think a lot of the community college students right now are really struggling to get excited and find joy, right, in their education.
Right.
And I think these programs also are a real key piece to that. When, a student just dropped off their deposit the other day and just her smile was from ear to ear. She said she was
Wow.
talking with all her family. They just want her to do this. Everyone's kind of contributing to her fund to go. So it really is something very special that I really do believe in deeply.
Well, and come to think of it, Global Educators Network, including the YouTube channel, we've been focusing also on the crisis and the opportunity of artificial intelligence in education. And it does occur to me that experiential learning is in some ways the direct answer to the challenge that AI is posing. And of course, we've also gone on the channel about the many opportunities involved in artificial intelligence in education. But artificial intelligence can't go to Cuba for you. It can't interact on the ground with actual Cuban citizens, right, of all ages. It can't replace the experience of walking on those beaches in one of the most biodiverse places on the entire planet Earth in a year that's been the hottest year in human history, and actually in the last 125,000 years, as we know, right? At a moment of truly pivotal importance in the history of the planet. And AI can do lots of things, and it's very smart, and it's a fantastic tool for learning in many ways, but it will never replace the experiences that you're offering here. So maybe even more in the 1-year anniversary of the introduction of ChatGPT, which I think was yesterday or something like
Oh,
that.
was it? Okay.
What a great time to be talking about the absolute importance of experiential learning at all levels. This being just the perfect opportunity to experience that.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. Wonderfully.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us on the Gen Channel again. You come up with so many innovative programs. I feel like I'll probably be interviewing you in another 6 months to a year about something else that I don't even know you're doing yet. But thank you so much for making time for us here. And if you have this little bald guy on a bus with a beard and a big smile, you can blame yourself, because this does make me desperate to figure out a way to get there myself. So
Yeah,
thank you very
love
much.
to have you. Well, my pleasure. Thank you.